Hey, good people, this is your Down back with another YouTube reflection, and this is a personal journal for contemplative people looking to think, grow, and have impact in the world. So, hey, Type 8 and Type 1, the difference. Type 8 and Type 1 is really the focus of this very short form reflection on YouTube, but I am prepping to do a longer form reflection on the podcast because this is something that has been surfacing for me. I've been seeing myself acting in ways that are indicative of type 1. I'm a type 8. I've been seeing myself acting in ways that I think are indicative of type 1, and I've been curious about it. So earlier this week, today is a Saturday, but earlier this week, I went on YouTube and was just like, let's just return, let's just go back. I've done this many times before where I look at the variance or the delineation between 8 and 1, how they overlap, how they're different. I was like, let's just go back and figure it out. So I found this lady. I don't think I've ever seen her before. And she did like a 6+ minute video. I'm going to say 7 minutes, but it wasn't 7 minutes. Let's just say 7, round up to 7. She did this 7-minute video on the 5 different ways that you can differentiate a type 8 from a type 1. 5 different ways, and it all is around anger, the sense of being right, details, control, and time. So good. So good. And I'm here to kind of unpack that here so that when I go to my podcast and I do a longer form reflection on what's been going on in my world that made me curious about the overlap between the 8 and 1. I've already flushed this out, so I don't want to really flush this out in the podcast, but we'll see what happens when I get there. But for now, that's the context to why I found this lady. I'm going to put her name in the notes, and I'm going to respond. I'm strictly trying to respond to this framework that she put together about how to delineate the 8 and 1 in the ways that I agree with her or resonate with what she's saying. And then I have some buts, like some hiccups. So if I had a chance to sit with her face to face, I'd be like, yeah, but this. Yeah, but that. You're going to have to give me a little bit more in this area, sweetie. So that's what I'm here to do. Let me give you a few disclaimers about who I am. If you're new to me, I have a podcast where I do long form reflections, a personal journal where I do long form reflections, processing my inner and my outer worlds. I do so by using personality theory. The 2 theories that I use the most are the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram. Pushing those 2 systems together, I identify as an INTJ 8. I have a number of other identities that are just as important to me, but the INTJ 8 is essential because that's the driving framework for the reflection. But I am multidisciplinary, okay? It is important to know that. It's also important to know that this reflection is unedited and is unscripted. This is purely a reflection. And most of the time it's long form, which is why I don't do much with YouTube, because YouTube is about 15-minute responses. If you want to know more about me or my project, feel free to go to my website at yournidom.wordpress.com, okay? All right. So I already told you there were 5 things that she offered to delineate between the 8 and the 1. And I'm going to give those to you. The first thing I really want to say, I just want to remind everybody that these are just maps. The Enneagram is just a map. Just like the Myers-Briggs is a map of the person. One of the things I'd like to spend time with when I get into the longer form reflection on this is the pathway between attitude and action. I've already done a reflection on that. According to social psychology, that our attitudes don't always translate into actions or behaviors. So that's where it gets confusing. Well, what I'm thinking about this morning after reflecting on this a little more is, so social psychologists talk about the pathway between the attitude and the action. And what I suspect is that there's something even before the attitude. And that's just because this delineation that this young lady makes between the 8 and the 1 works most of the time. And then there are a few hiccups where I'm like, Yeah, baby, but wait a minute. I do that as well. There's more variance here. There's just more variance that we need to factor in. All right, so with that being said, let me do one more thing that she offered. And I think this is so powerful. I needed to be reminded of that both the 8 and the 1 are part of the body triad, the gut. It's our way of knowing. Now, I'm an INTJ. I'm highly intuitive. My intuition really is centered in my body. So the more I move, the more intuitive I am. I've learned that about myself within the last 10 years. It's really fascinating. The more I move and the more intense I am in my movement, my intuition starts firing off. So for me, that makes sense. Now, if you're not in the body triad, I'm not sure how you make meaning of that. But anyway, so me being in the body triad really reinforces my relationship to intuition. And what I love about the Enneagram, and it relates to this body concept, is that the Enneagram acknowledges that we have 3 points of intelligence: the body, the heart, and the mind. I think it's a more honest representation. It's a more honest map of what it means to be human, because we're technically supposed to flow through all of those numbers. We're supposed to flow through all of those all those points of intelligence. The Myers-Briggs doesn't offer that. It just doesn't. Okay, I don't know if that's not what this reflection is about, so let me come back. So I just think I wanted to say that. All right, let's get to the delineation. First thing she said that I'm going to point address to is anger. With type 8s, this is what she said, and I agree. And I'm just going to talk as though I agree with her until I don't. All right? Type 8s, anger lives right under the surface. And with type 1s, it's pushed down. Because type 1s don't want to be angry, because anger is not seen to be good. All right? Now, I just did another YouTube reflection about 8s and about an introverted 8. And what the guy said in that video is that 8s walk around with a ball of fire. Now, how we respond to that ball of fire, how we attend to it, is based on these other conditions, these other variables, right? But we, as an 8, we are going to address that ball of fire. We're not trying to push it away. We just respond to it differently. Whereas type 1s are trying to push it away. Now, here's the but. I come from a family of you're supposed to look good in the world. And then I'm in an occupation that it comes from more purity culture. So I show up as a 1 sometimes because I was raised to present myself in a polished, sanitized way. And I come from an occupation that requires me to present myself in a polished, sanitized way. That's where it gets confusing between like when I'm trying to repress that anger. And as I've gotten older, when I was younger, I didn't repress that anger. And as I've gotten older and more liberated, I'm back in touch with that ball of fire. But there were 2 reasons why I was moving that ball of fire away from me. And it had nothing to do with my attitude or my motivation. It was all my socialization through the family and with my occupation. So that was one thing. The other difference between the 8 and the 1 is there's how we see doing right. And I love that she said both the 8s and 1 both want to do the right thing. I've never heard anybody say that 8s want to do the right thing. I've always heard doing the right thing as a type 1. So I think I got what she... The difference between the 8 and 1 and doing the right thing, according to this lady, is 8s want to do the right way based on what they think the right way is. Type 1s want to do the right way, do the right thing, or be the right way based on some kind of outside standard. And I do straddle that. I have a deep conviction about how things should be in the world. I have my own theory. I don't want to get into that here, but I've developed as a researcher and as a practitioner of 30 years, I've developed my own theory of something. I have written about it. I'm about to release my 3rd book, and I've started my 4th book. I have another podcast beyond the one that's for this project. I have a primary podcast about that theory. I'm a speaker on that theory. I teach on that theory. And That theory governs my right and wrong, and I do not deviate it. I suffer it. But that comes from me. Whereas a type 1 is going to do the right thing based on those external standards. Now, outside of the theory that I've created, outside of my meanness, hey, I'll try to lean in with the outside world once because I'm an INTJ. And the INTJ means that I have extroverted thinking. I'm a strategist. And if getting a thing done effectively means I got to tap into what the external world wants, then I'm going to be sensitive to it. But that's all about strategy. But my true self is governed by this thing that I have developed, that I think is right. Thought that was a really nice distinction. The other hold on, I'm running out of time. The other distinction, according to this lady, between the 8 and the 1 is how they deal with details. Type 8s dislike details. Type 1s live in the details because it makes them right. Man, I don't even have it. I don't have a but in here. I don't have a but here. I think about where I'm at in my job. We use the language adaptive and technical with our organization. And we identify people on this adaptive technical scale. I lean more adaptive. But when it's time to get things done, I put people around me to attend to the technical because I'm not getting ready to use my energy to deal with those details. Although as an INTJ, I believe that those details are necessary to get the thing done. I'm just not going to attend to it. So I just surround people. I put people on my team that will attend to those details. All right, another distinction between the 8 and the 1, according to this lady, is how we deal with control. This is another one that was this was probably the most difficult for me, I think, out of the 5 that she offered. She said the Enneagram controls the environment and the type 8 controls the environment and the type 1 controls feelings. God, I want to linger here. I would love to linger here. You have to go to the full form reflection now that I'll do on this one. I think this is where I have to bring back the MBTI for the variance and how we respond to that ball of fire. I am not going to give everything my energy. As an introvert and a thinker, I am going to, the outside world is important, but everything in the outside world is not going to get my energy. And when I say important, in terms of control, right? I am going to control the outer world before I control my feelings, but I will regulate myself because number one, I think that is a sign of maturity to be self-regulated. I also don't want to be overpowered by anything, and that includes my own emotions, mainly because I don't want someone to control me. I don't want another person controlling me through my emotions. My anger is for me, it is not for you. So that's the difference. But in terms of how I will control that environment, it's going to very much depend on, is it worth my energy? That's where I sound like a type 5. And is it about being effective? That's the T in me. And so that I want to just say that. And then the last thing, and I do have to go, is time. I thought this was really interesting. I have never heard anybody situate type 8 as it relates to time. She said type 8s are, and she likened this to type 3s and 7s. Type 8s are future oriented. What's next? Whereas type 1s are in the moment, being loyal, dutiful, and compliant. My. And you already know as an intuitive, as an INTJ intuitive, I'm all about moving forward, seeing what's on the horizon, moving us and getting us to that next place. I am not about staying in the moment, which is why my current living right now, every week I have to roll out the trash can. Just annoys the hell out of me. So anyway, I gotta go. I've run out of time. You guys, if this reflection has had any value for you, please give it a like. If this conversation about 8 and 1 relates to one you've had in the world, please take this link and share with those participants. If my moving about has caused some randomness in you, I would love to hear it. You can find me on my website at yournidom.wordpress.com. I'm gonna put the lady's name in the show notes, and I did tweet out her content. So go to my website, my Twitter account, yournidom1. All right. You guys, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Or go to my podcast too, Your Anti-Dom. You guys, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. And until I come back, be well. Bye.